Welcome back, creators. So, The Dark Beginnings has finally released, and this has been one of the most highly anticipated things for me personally out of all the marketing for Shadow Generations leading up to this point of the game's release. And we've only seen the first episode, it's just 5 minutes or so, but what they're able to accomplish in just that 5 minutes is quite incredible. I've always wanted to see a dream sequence for Shadow that really highlights, like, this is what he lives with every day, and he has nightmares like this all the time. I should really say nightmares, not dreams, because it just perfectly puts you in the state of mind of the character, and then the adventure can start. And so what I'm realizing this animation is really about is it's a modern day Shadow who gets this glimpse of Black Doom in his nightmare, and he gets this weird feeling, and he's like, that can't be Black Doom, it can't be him. That's strange, like I need to go figure this out. And so I don't know where they're going with that, but it's a really good idea for the start of this, because I think we all assumed, oh, we're just getting a flashback of the arc, but really it's like multiple flashbacks in a nightmare sequence, all sort of very creatively stitched together to give you a quick refresher on how he lost Maria and the time when Gunn raided the ark. And so it has really interesting callbacks, and we get a very unique perspective. We never really got to see the raid on the Ark and how big it was. It's like this huge fleet of ships. It almost looks like the opening of Sonic Unleashed with all of Eggman's ships in outer space, you know? It's very reminiscent of that. But you really see the full force of the Guardian Units of Nations, what they're really capable of. They can be pretty scary too. You know, then Shadow falls down and to this dark place, and then the lights turn on and it's Gerald, and he's strapped to the chair about to be killed by the firing squad. And it's just like, it doesn't back down from any single plot point from Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog. It's just very much not afraid to go full force into it. And so this is what happens when, first of all, there's a consistent creative vision for what they want this thing to be. But on top of that, this is also what happens when they fully lean into Shadow's types of stories, which are much more serious, are much darker, but they don't go too far with it. They're not trying to be edgy. They're not trying to be too cool, like overly cool about it. Like, it's just, this is what it is. This is what Shadow has nightmares about. And it all makes perfect sense to me. And it's never been delivered in this way, in such a creative way, but, you know, delivered in just such a, this is it, this is the reality, this is not us trying to play it up, this is not us trying to be edgy, this is the tone I want for Sonic, specifically Shadow, but this is what I want the franchise to be less afraid of tackling, is these darker sort of aspects of the story and the franchise. Because if you don't fully commit to the tone, the problem that ends up happening is that people can sense that, and when you're not fully in it, and you're like half in this tone and half in this tone, it's like, no, you gotta go full in. You gotta do a cannonball into that tone to really commit to it and present it in the correct way. And I think when things come off as like, oh, that doesn't fit, or oh, that was cringy, or oh, that tone doesn't really fit, or oh, that sort of came out of nowhere, it's like because it's trying to be two different things, and this is just one thing. I don't really know how else to explain it. In my personal opinion, the meta era, as they call it, the writers were tasked with basically taking Sonic out of that dark age that 06 left it in, but I feel like they steered far too much to one direction, and the pendulum was bound to swing back down the other way eventually, and here we are, right? But here's the thing though, I don't think they're going too far in the other direction with this game and its marketing and with The Dark Beginnings. I think they're just right in the middle. We can still have a variety of different tones in the series, but it doesn't have to be so drastically one way or drastically the other, you know? And I think that's why, if it's true that they're rewriting gens, which I don't know, because I'm getting a lot of conflicting comments saying it is true, it's not true, it is true, it's not true. Look, I heard that there was a source from someone that had inside knowledge of what was going on with the game's development, and they said, right, that it was going to be rewritten and the cutscenes are being redone, and Ian Flynn is involved and all of that. So that's what I heard, and I'm taking that into account, because why wouldn't I? It's a very exciting prospect. So anyway, this first episode was so well done, and it blew me away. And seeing how Maria has to struggle with this illness, and Shadow has to watch it and not really know how to create a cure for her, that's probably the most painful thing. I think even more painful than losing her was just being told that you're supposed to be able to cure her, and he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how he can do it, you know? And that is a really devastating part of this, that I'm like, yes, like they're tackling all the themes. The true tragedy of Shadow as a character is not necessarily, not only that he lost Maria, that he had no idea what he was even created for, because they're like, oh, you're the ultimate life form and you're going to be the cure for all sorts of diseases, and you're going to figure things out and you're going to give us all the answers. And he's just sitting there like, I have no idea why they're putting all this on my shoulders. And that is a huge weight to carry. And I feel like Shadow has never really stopped carrying that weight. You know, he feels a responsibility to protect the earth and to protect the world and to protect his friends. I think there's going to be an evolution of this character at the end of Shadow Generations, but I'll save that for another video. So where I'm guessing things are going to go is that obviously Team Dark is involved, so he's probably going to go to Rouge and Omega and tell them his theory that he thinks Black Doom is back or something like that. I'm assuming. I don't know. Maybe they'll get involved in some other way. But yeah, I really like this narrative. I really like the way it starts out. The animation is incredible. I mean, you have no idea how badly I just want them to do a movie in this style. And this is what I was actually talking about in my other video, sort of being disappointed in the Sonic movies. I said, like, I'd rather them just do an animated series of films where we get an animation similar to Dark Beginnings and they go through all the stories of the games, or they just come up with new stories and those older stories happen still. Like, the movies are actually canon to the games. And I'm like, this is such a genius idea, because instead of these really short yet sweet prologue animations they do for all their new games, what they should instead do is just like make full-on movies, and also put these cutscenes into the game, whether they're like 2D animated or 3D animated. I think these should be in the game as a part of the narrative. Like when you start the game, this is the first cutscene and you can skip it, but like that's how it should be. And I'm hoping we get to that point someday, which I'm sure it's sooner rather than later, seeing how like the jump from Frontiers to Shadow Generations has been huge. I think at least the animations are going to be in the game, and there's going to even be exclusive bonus content for the PlayStation version with like extra deleted scenes and stuff like that. So they really put a lot of work and thought into this, and you can tell, like, you know, whoever was behind this animation, they were obviously following a story and like, you know, things that Sonic Team wanted, but like I think they understand the character just by the way it's animated, just by the way it's done. So I'm really, really impressed with this. This is like some of the best animation work I've ever seen in any 2D animated Sonic anything. But man, it just works so well. If we could just have a movie in this style, like a trilogy of like original stories or reimagined stories, that would be so, so cool. Kind of like how DC does it, you know, where they just take comic book stories and they animate them and put them on the silver screen. I mean, not a lot of these animated films come out in theaters or anything, but like they still do well, you know, on streaming services. And I grew up watching a lot of those DC animated films, and they were always so inspiring, and the animation was really well done in a lot of them. So I'd like to see that same sort of thing. And I think Sega and Sonic Team must see that like that would be a really good investment, because while the movies are great, like they did start out as this very simplistic, like live action CGI animal character interacts with human character and they grow a bond through the movie. And it's like, where have you seen that before? It's like very childish, you know, films that are very designed to be made for kids. And 2D animation, I feel, has this ability to break through that and sort of be for both kids and adults. And sometimes it's really just for adults. There's been lots of animated like DC films, for example, like Batman films, where I'm like, yeah, this is definitely not for kids. Like there's a lot of blood and gore and just serious topics and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, if they can do it, I think Sonic can do it. And for the record, you know, for the people who don't understand Sonic's ability to access darker tones, I really want you to understand that Sonic is not Mario, Sonic is not Crash Bandicoot, Sonic is not Mega Man, Sonic is not Banjo-Kazooie. Sonic is Sonic, and there's nothing and will never be anything like it. And so you cannot compare it to those things and say, well, imagine if Mario had darker stories like this, people would not be able to take it seriously. It's like, of course not, because that doesn't fit the tone of Mario, but it fits the tone of Sonic, you know, at least in my opinion. I know everyone's going to have their own opinion on that, but you know, there are some people who really like the classic stories and only like a little bit of a tinge of seriousness, you know, and then there's some people that love the early 2000s like myself and grew up with that and see the potential in that. not necessarily say it was all perfectly made and well done, but I see the potential in that. And now the potential in 2024, 20 years later, after the release of Shadow the Hedgehog, is now being fully realized. You have to understand how crazy that is from a perspective of a fan of my generation, to be able to see an animation like this that doesn't shy away from acknowledging anything. It doesn't change anything to make it, a little bit less like, we don't want to show this or we don't want to show that. No, it goes fully in. And so I really appreciate it for that. Yeah, I can't wait to see where this goes. I don't know if each episode's going to be 5 minutes, because if that's the case and there's 3 of them, it's going to be like a 15-minute ordeal, which means altogether it's the length of like 1 episode, of something. If this is like a pitch for some sort of a Sonic show, I'm so for that. But then again, them just making animations for their YouTube channel, it does pretty well for their YouTube channel. YouTube is really big, always will be. And that might just be a smarter, more viable option than going and paying a studio and signing a contract to make like a whole trilogy or double that, 6 films, and sign on for that and hire a new voice cast or just use the game voice cast. Like, I don't know what they would plan to do there. It is a lot, but if they can do the movies now, get Keanu Reeves in an official game, like, even though the story is not canon for that DLC, by the way, I did learn that the other day, then that's not impossible, that we could see an animated thing. We know that the movies are not going to go on forever. Every trilogy of movies, like, it either goes on for another trilogy and then ends, or it ends after the first trilogy. And so, I don't think we're going to be getting like 12 films out of this thing. I could be wrong, but I think we should really appreciate this while it exists and while it's here, and see the value in it, see the good in it. I've been very negative towards the movies in the past, even though I did enjoy a lot of aspects of the first 2 and the show. I see a lot of flaws too, and I'm very passionate about that, like the fact that this has so many eyes on it and it represents the brand in a lot of ways right now, so much so that we're getting DLC for it in a Shadow game. It's like, okay, this might upset some people, but we do have to acknowledge that, like, with that many eyes on it, it does matter. That's why I care. It's very hard for me to just say nothing and not talk about it, especially when my channel is so focused on like story and character aspects. It would be really strange for me to just be like, well, I don't have anything good to say, so I'm just not going to share how I feel, and maybe see if other people feel the same way, and if they don't, and why, and maybe they can change my mind on some things. And I have had my mind changed on a lot of things, and I did realize a lot of things. So yeah, I think overall, I don't want this video to go on too long here, but yeah, The Dark Beginnings is going to change things for the future, and it will always be proof that it can work. The tone can be found, and it's found in anime, and that's a really interesting medium to find this perfect balance of tone for Sonic. Is like, yeah, that does make sense. Sonic is and will always be Japanese, and I think he will always fit into the anime aesthetic more than any other, and it's good that we're also leaning into that a little bit with their video game designs. Yeah, don't even get me started on the action. I could go on and on about that, but yeah, the action was very good and very inspiring for me as someone who has a Sonic animated series. It's like, okay, maybe I need to up the game on my fight scenes and get a little bit more technical with them. Yeah, I can't wait to see more of this. I'll probably be making a video about each episode, so be looking forward to that, and I'll see you guys in the next video, creators. Peace out.